So our topic today is graffiti and murals. Is it art? Well, I'm certainly not an expert in this field, but I've always been attracted to murals in the Sacramento area where I live. And in March 2020, when my wife Julie and I visited Colombia, we enjoyed the murals in Bogota and Medellin before having to evacuate due to the COVID concerns. So today, I'd like to share some of the murals from those areas, Sacramento and Colombia. But before I begin, I want to just recognize the best source I found was the book called Graffiti New York by Eric Fellisbrett, who was the former graffiti artist. And he spent over 30 years observing and documenting graffiti as well as creating graffiti. So most of the photos in this presentation are going to be mine. A few are from the internet or from Eric's book. I'll try and document those as we go along if I know the source of the photographs. So let's get started. So to begin, I'd like to talk about graffiti, and then we'll move into murals, since the street murals we see today are kind of a natural progression from the early graffitis of the 1970s. So in looking it up, the term graffiti derives from the Italian graffio, meaning scratching, and can be defined as uninvited markings or writing scratched or applied to objects, built structures, and natural features. Graffiti and murals or paintings on a wall are certainly not a new phenomenon. Examples can be found on ancient structures around the world, such as the Lascaux cave paintings in France and other historic places. Now, the scholars believe that the images of the hunting scenes found at these sites were either meant to commemorate the past hunting victories or were used as part of rituals intended to increase the hunter's success. I'm just going to turn my video off too. So another example of early graffiti is in the Egyptian ruins at Philae Temple near Aswan. Here you can see some crude inscriptions carved into the ancient ruins that were in the mid-1800s. I think these were some French soldiers, as I recall from when we were there, what they told us. During World War II, it became popular for soldiers to write the phrase, "Kilroy was here," along with a simple sketch of a bald figure with a large nose peeking over a ledge. And the motivation behind this simple early graffiti was to create a connection for these soldiers during their difficult times. It's cementing their unique brotherhood while in the foreign lands and to make themselves seen. So this was closely aligned with the motivation behind contemporary graffiti, with the writers aiming to assert their existence and to repeat their mark in as many places as possible. And graffiti brings up some strong emotions. You know, some people love it and some people hate it. Some say it's a crime and others say it's freedom of expression. I know one of my first friendship force journeys was to Kiel, Germany, and it made me really sad to see the graffiti on the historic buildings. I'm not a personal fan of illegal graffiti that defaces property. Just recently, just a week or so ago, Julie and I were in the Pinnacles National Park, where they had to wrap some of the trees to keep people from carving their name in the bark, and the graffiti was killing the trees. And on that trip, we weren't able to go into one of the caves because someone had spray painted on the walls, and the park district was having to sandblast it off. And we talked to one of the rangers who said it was a little more difficult than expected. I think the cave was going to be closed for about a week. But researching for today's talk on our graffiti tours in Colombia has given me some interesting insights. In his book, Eric Fellisbrett says that graffiti is just another art form, that it's similar to the way the Impressionist painters in the late 1800s couldn't show their work in the salons of Paris. He notes that today, after 60 years, artists who started with writing their names on walls have their own language, clothing, attire, books, magazines, videos, and some are showing their work in well-known museums. But the thrill of doing something illegal was part of the graffiti culture and still is for some people. This need to put your mark up quickly before you got caught was also a factor in how the early tags were done. So before I get too far into this, there's a language specific to the graffiti culture. A tag is a name or pseudonym. Many taggers use their street address in their tags, such as Julio 204, or a number after their initials to identify them as another person using the same tag name, such as Phase 2 or Hondo 1. Also, many of them don't like the name graffiti. They prefer to call themselves writers. So I'm going to use that term today. So for this presentation, we're going to concentrate on the writers that use spray paint as their medium. So the ability to purchase inexpensive paint was an important part of early graffiti. The goal was to get your name out in volume as many places as possible, as fast as possible, without getting caught. Indeed, the fundamental underlying principle of graffiti practice was the intention to, quote, get up, to have one's work seen by as many people as possible. Since having your name seen was critical, writers figured out that the subway trains were a great way to have many people see their tag, since the cars moved throughout the city. Well, spray paints have small nozzles, so they figured out that you can take nozzles from other items like oven cleaner or spray starch with wider nozzles and put them on spray cans. This allowed them to make large, thick tags quickly. Since the larger letters were easier to see on things like subway cars, they became very popular. A quote from Fellowsburt's book says, "There are three basic forms of writing: tags, throw-ups, and pieces. Each has a distinctive look and a specific purpose. Writers devote substantial time and effort to developing skills for each. Many writers specialize in one form, while others diversify their efforts among the forms." So a tag or hand style is basically a signature. They're used to get your name out quickly, to bomb where quantity, not quality, is the goal. The tag is where you start from. They're done with spray cans or permanent markers. And tag placement is important, and writers will strategize for visual impact. A tag can be simple and legible or ornate, and is measured by its neatness, style, and originality. There are many tag styles too, such as straight letters that resemble typeface, often written in all capitals, scripts taken from italic or script typeface that are often altered or then stylized. Classic are letters that have evolved within the writing community. Writers alter the proportion and flow of the letters and add accents to make them unique. Drips are made when markers are filled with excessive amounts of ink to make intentional dripping. And flare is when the tag is adorned with a variety of graphic elements, such as crowns or stars, dots, arrows, etc. The word pieces is short for masterpieces. This is a more complex and artistic form of writing. Pieces are bold, stylized letters that have more color, depth, and a variety of designs. They have increased in scale and complexity over the years. There are two main styles of pieces. Straight letters, like here in the upper right where it says hero, are block letters that closely resemble the alphabet. They can have different fonts, be thin, fat, tall, or squat, and they're mostly used for legibility, which is important when the general public is the target audience. Wild style is when letters are abstract. They bend, fold, interlock, twist, and overlap. Wild style is intended for other writers to see the skill and creativity of a particular writer or crew. They're intended to be read and understood by other writers and not necessarily by the general public. A throw-up is quickly rendered and simplified. Names are more substantial than tags, but less time and paint than pieces. The main purpose is volume, done quick and large, usually in two colors, but can be in a variety of styles. By the way, for you Sacramento people, these are all from Midtown, just a few blocks from my house. The exact geographical location of the first tagger is difficult to pinpoint. Some sources identify New York, specifically taggers Julio 204 and Taki 183 of the Washington Heights area, and others identify Philadelphia with tagger Cornbread as the point of origin during the 1970s. It goes more or less undisputed that New York is where graffiti culture blossomed, matured, and most clearly distinguished itself from other prior forms of graffiti. Writers soon figured out that subway cars were a great way to get your pieces seen. They first started tagging, then creating masterpieces on the cars. Eventually, the best writers and their crews were covering whole subway cars, top to bottom and side to side. By the mid-1980s, the New York subway system, the MTA, had had enough. In 1984, they began to pull trains that had graffiti on them out of the system and didn't run those train cars until they had cleaned off all of the graffiti. So let's push the writers to go to other places, like rooftops, billboards, rail cars, delivery trucks, etc. And police squads were soon dedicated to capturing the writers, and they were cracking down on the crews. Eventually, some of the crews started working with business owners to get permission to create large-scale productions or murals. Crews were established, some with members all over the world, who only allowed the best artists into their crew. As I said, in March 2020, Julie and I went to Colombia for vacation. We discovered that Bogota had what they called a graffiti tour, so we signed up for it. During the few hours we spent walking through the city, our guide explained that there are several reasons why people make graffiti. First, it's marking your territory, putting up your name or the name of your crew. Criminal gangs also use graffiti to mark their territory, but not all tags are criminals. Another reason is a political statement. This one is supporting the removal of landmines in Colombia. And sometimes it's to create art. He also explained that some people use stickers to quickly get their pieces up. They practice in sketchbooks, creating the signatures or piece they want to create, and then they make them on a sticker like a postal label or a "Hello, I'm blank" name tag. And they can make these at home or in school even, and then quickly slap them up around town. Here we have some kind of professionally made stickers with some political messages on them on one side, and then some more homemade type stickers on the other side. So stencils are another way to get your message out very fast. So rather than spray painting or stickers, you create a stencil, put up against the wall, spray paint over the top of the stencil, and you've got a really quick way to duplicate your art all over the place. These particular ones are by a famous Colombian writer, or they call them graffiteros, and his name is DJ Lou. And he was a fine arts graduate from the National University in Colombia. So let's take a little break here, and I'm going to go show you about a 5-minute slideshow on the graffiti and murals we saw in Bogota. So after several days enjoying Bogota, we flew to Medellin, Colombia. So this town used to have the reputation of being the murder capital of the world. It was the center of the Escobar drug cartel. The town has had an incredible overhaul, and we found it to be really fascinating, and we felt pretty safe there actually, and we really liked it a lot. One factor that seemed to help the development of the town was that the poor neighborhoods used graffiti tours to bring in tourists. The neighborhood we visited was Comuna 13, and you can see some of the murals on the small roads along the hillside here. The young man who showed us through his neighborhood explained how the locals decided to not wait for the government to give them a job, but created their own work through their art. People pay to go on the tours, and they buy food or artwork as they visit, and that brings money into the community. We saw many incredible murals, street performers, and had some good local beer. One thing that was pointed out to us is that there are three aspects to hip hop culture that include music, dance, and graffiti. So here's a short video of some breakdancers who were performing in the streets for tips. And note the name has C13 on it for Comuna 13. Yeah, they were a lot of fun. So I'm going to just start with sorry, I got sidetracked with my notes here for a second. So we're going to share a few minutes of the murals of Medellin with you now. So I'm afraid to think how the pandemic has hurt this area, but hopefully their resilience and hard work will pull them through. So finally we come to our hometown of Sacramento. So Julie and I moved to this area and this part of Sacramento, the Midtown, about 21 years ago. And we noticed there were a few murals around town. There was even a calendar that was created and sold through the local art supply shops with a different mural on each month. And one of those months was this mural. And I'm not sure if this is the oldest mural in the city, but we found one that was made from many artists, each doing a small square on a wall, kind of an early precursor. And another I always enjoy is the one on J Street. It's a copy of a famous painting that's in the Crocker Art Gallery, and it shows the characters crawling out of the painting and climbing down this ladder. Just thought that was cute. So for several years after we moved here, we liked discovering the few murals that were around town. And now it seems like murals are often used to draw attention to a business. This one is fairly recently, I want to say 6 months or so ago, they painted this on a Thai restaurant down over on J Street. Some of them have been around quite a bit longer. This one's been downtown for a long time, as is this one. It certainly draws your eye to the stores. Or some murals give you an idea of what's going on inside, what's going to be sold there. This is I guess it's a parrot drinking a margarita. This one was just completed last month, I think. And sometimes murals are designed to encourage you to have fun and react with the art. So in 2016, Wide Open Walls changed the face of Sacramento. In a quote from their website, they say, "We believe that art is an integral part of the human experience and can empower, inspire, and transform lives. Wide Open Walls promotes diversity through artistic expression. The festival brings local, national, and international artists together to transform our region with amazing street art. We also produce other public arts throughout the year. Wide Open Walls brings underserved neighborhoods public art that encourages a sense of pride and identity, provides community gathering spaces, generates impactful, measurable economic growth for our region, and promotes greater cultural understanding and appreciation among diverse groups." Their website, wideopenwalls.com, I encourage everyone to go there and check it out. You'll find they have over 150 murals on the website now, goes throughout the region. And you can kind of drill down through the map on the site and find exactly where the art is. And you can even create your own tour with that little button up there on the right. You can add things to your tour. You can go in and check the artists out, get detailed information about them. And for Julie and me, it's always become a tradition to ride our bicycles around town each year during the 10 days or so when the murals are being created. We really like chatting with the artists and watching as the pieces developed. This is one I really love. It's one of my favorites. It's across the street from the Sacramento Food Co-op. And the artist, Brian Valenzuela, who actually happens to be from Sacramento, he described it as the conflict between the political parties with the rope fraying as they tug against each other. There's a little pose he did for us in 2017 when we shot while he was creating that. One of the things I really like about his art is he uses words and letters to create the shading of his art. So you can see here, like this thumb, how tight the words or letters are, or how loose they are, creates the different shading for just the thumb. So let's step back and look at the whole piece again, now that you realize that it's made up of all little words and letters. I just find it incredible that he can do that. So wide open walls help make murals popular in Sacramento, and now many buildings are being painted outside of the wide open walls format. I talked with the crew that was painting this mural a few years ago, and they said the owners just told them they could paint whatever they wanted on his wall. This is one that represents a second generation Japanese singer from Sacramento in the 1930s. She became very popular in California and then ended up going to Japan, where she had a singing career there as well. It's in front of a small apartment building that was recently restored. You can just see a touch of it there on the right. This mural was just painted on a building that's still under construction. The site was the former Sacramento Ballet offices and practice studios. And so they incorporated the design of the ballet figure into the design of their building. I think it's going to be apartments. There's another new apartment building, I think it was just came up 6 or 8 months ago. They painted all 4 sides of their building. It's just another angle of it. And sometimes people just do fun things like this little ode to RBG. Oops. So we're going to take the last few minutes to explore some of Sacramento's murals. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation as much as I enjoyed putting it together. I learned a little more about graffiti, even though I still don't like personal property being defaced and I still can't read most graffiti. At least I know a little bit more about what's going on now in that world, and I'm really enjoying how Sacramento is painting the city. So we'll open it up to questions. I don't know that I can answer them, but we'll try. So you can unmute yourself if anybody wants. Let me just look at the chat and see if there's anything in there.
Chris, I put a few links in there, one to our Friendship Force website and the other to Wide Open Walls.
Great.
Just wanted to let you know that was excellent. I really enjoyed both the photos from Bogota and then also just all of the Sacramento murals. Many I haven't seen, so thanks so much for putting that together.
There's so many of them. There's hundreds out there, and this is just a small piece of them. Yeah. Yeah, and Kathy put in the link to our Friendship Force website, ffsacramento.org. We do events on there, and we're constantly updating things that we're doing around town. I am going to probably put together another walking tour here, and what I'll probably do is I'll set it up on the events page with a specific date, but that will vary if the rains come or something. So if you're interested, check that out. Maybe by tomorrow I'll have it up. And if you register, there's no charge for it. But if you register, that way I can keep you informed if the date changes or the time changes, because we'll kind of do a tentative tour and see how many people we get and what people want to do.
Chris, Sylvie asked if the murals in Sacramento are cataloged. I know that they are.
Yeah, the Wide Open Walls murals are cataloged. There are many of not many, but the ones that I showed at the beginning before the slideshow, most of those were not Wide Open Walls murals. Those were ones that just I know from living down here. Those I've not seen a good catalog of those. There was one guy who was starting a website on them about 6 years ago, but I think it sort of got stopped, and I'm not even sure if it's up yet still, but you could Google Sacramento murals and see if that pops up. But Wide Open Walls, and I can show that again if people want, but if you go to their website, let me just do that real quickly, because I think it's worth spending a moment for you to see it. Can you see that, Kath? Does that show up?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I see it.
Yeah, so if you go up here and you see the the more button on their website, when you first come, you click on that. That's going to bring up another menu here, a sub menu. So if you want to see the artist, you'll click on that. But if you go to the map button, can ignore that. At first, it just shows the murals in a icon view. I like to go up here where it says map again in the top right and click on that. And then you could just drill down into wherever you want to go. Let's say you wanted to go into Del Paso Heights, for example. A lot of people don't do that, so let's push that. So it'll say, okay, there's 3 murals right on this corner. So you can click on that, say, oh, okay, there's one there. You click on it, it'll tell you, it gives you a little, slide this up a little bit. It'll show you a little bit what it is, and then you can click on the mural details. That shows you a bigger picture of what you would expect to see, and then it talks about the artist. So you can drill down pretty deeply on this map on what's out there. So I'd suggest to start with that. And I think I haven't done it in a while, but I'm pretty sure that when you click on one, yeah, you see when it comes up, it says add to my tour. So let's say you wanted to go to that place, you just click add to my tour, and you'll notice up here now it says I have one map in my tour. And if I went over here and did it again, click on something, add it to my tour. Now I have 2 maps, 2. Then when you click on your tour, it shows you these are the ones you have, and it gives you directions, and you can actually change them location. So if you want, oh no, I want to see this one first, you can drag it down and move it and sort of organize your whole tour. It's really very good website. So if you want to see without me, go on your own, just go to Wide Open Walls and you'll see most of them. Then just keep your eye open when you're out there for ones that are not Wide Open Walls ones. Other question?
Chris, are
Uh-huh.
artists paid, or do people donate to Wide Open Walls so that?
Yeah, they are paid, and I don't know where all their funding comes from. I got sidetracked. I was going to research that because someone else asked me that.
Chris,
I know
I've talked to some artists, and I think a lot of the businesses will offer funds. I think especially like if it's their, wall.
Yeah.
I don't know who else, how they might raise funds, perhaps through funding for arts. I'm not sure.
They get some funding through the city, I think, too, because they do have links on their site through this to the city's I forget what
Art
they call
council or something.
Yeah, it's one of those councils that encourage people to come to Sacramento. There's a name for it. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but yeah. So I think there is some grant money in there as well, and they of course do take donations as well. And then, like I said, the ones that are not Wide Open Walls, those typically the businesses would pay the person to do it. So that one that I showed you, it was just an pretty much abandoned building. All they used it was for some parking. And I don't think that guy paid for it, but the other ones like Tres Hermanas and the Thai restaurant, Julie noted today that the same artist did both of those. So I'm sure he was paid for his work for those restaurants. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, Marty has her hand up, I noticed on the icon.
Oh, thanks, Marty. Go ahead.
No,
I don't see her.
Muted, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I went on a tour with David Sabone, who is the organizer of Wide Open Walls. It's a nonprofit and they pay for the paint. And I'm not sure if they pay them, but I know they pay for the paint, and he organizes with the property owners to get the sites.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting because you didn't show it, but the waterfall mural that's on that alley where the John Lewis one is. A woman that did that, it's a woman from Sacramento who had never painted before, and she did that, and because of that she's had 4 years of being a very successful mural artist all around the country. So people get commissions from the murals that they do. So anyway, he's I've had him now do 2 tours for me, and he's really good if you want some information about the murals and how they got there and stuff. He's really interesting.
Yeah, I had a nice chat with him one day too. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
It is a 501c3. I forgot to mention that.
It is a 501c3, and they take donations. And so they've had this festival every year now for the last 4 years.
2016 they started.
Yeah,
5
years. Yeah. So it's really a neat thing to have. And he told us that the alley that runs down behind K Street, they're going to make it all music all the way down to the convention center.
Oh yeah, well, Jazz Alley.
Jazz Alley, yeah.
Yeah, because the alleys are labeled by the street north of them. So between J and K would be Jazz Alley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's lots more to come. So it's just amazing. Another thing is Helen and I were in Valparaiso, Chile, and they have amazing murals. So it must be a big thing in South America.
It's all over the world. I did just a quick search on the internet before we did this, and I found that there are major mural tours in New York City, of course, Madrid, Spain, Los Angeles, the Mission District in San Francisco, Melbourne, Australia, Mexico City, the Palermo District in Buenos Aires, Stockholm and Sweden in their metro stations in Stockholm and Sweden. So
and in our May program we showed some from Reno. Deborah showed those, the murals up in Reno.
Yeah, so it's becoming a very popular thing to do throughout the world. So yeah, and so I don't know if I answered the question, is it art? but, but I think for me, the murals are
Yeah,
art.
yeah.
And I'm not quite there yet with the graffiti. You know, some of it's like some of those ones they call masterpieces. I would say those are art, but I don't know, I can't read them, but some
Yeah.
art I can't understand either. So, so there's nothing new about that for me. But the graffiti that's just the tags where they spray their name, that just ticks me off. I don't think that's art. I think that's just vandalism, but
Yeah.
that's my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, does somebody else have any other questions? Okay, well, I think I'm going to throw it back over to you, Ray, as
Okay.
our president. And thank you all who are not Friendship Force members for coming and joining us. We're going to do a little bit of a meeting, just a few announcements, and then kind of open it up for everybody just to chat.